Week 20. We're here. This is the last week of the summer session, and the bounty is astounding. You can tell that frost has kissed some of the vegetables. That's why we were able to harvest the Brussels sprouts. So you may, depending on the size of your box, see a Brussels sprouts tree. All you have to do is just take a little sharp knife and nip all those little buds off, and you can store them in a Ziploc bag till you're ready to eat them. I prefer to roast them. I like to cut them in half so there's a flat surface. Rub them with a little oil, olive oil, and then roast them in the oven until they get that nice little caramely on the flat surface, and then just drizzle some balsamic vinegar or reduction sauce on them. Just something sweet. It's just great finger food and a big treat. I wanted to tell you a little bit about what happens and why we wait for cold weather before we harvest the Brussels sprout. Plants use sugar as their antifreeze, and so when it gets colder at night, a lot of the vegetables will, if you will, sugar up, and that's what we wait for on these. That's happened, and so they'll show up this week. Enjoy. They're a special treat. We've already enjoyed their tops several weeks ago, those lovely tender green leaves. We harvest those off the top, and now we get the rest of the buds. So that's one of the fun things, fall vegetables. We have the trifecta of greens. We've got kale, and we have rainbow chard. Look how pretty. Look at all the colors in there. And lovely tender collards. I think this week my approach is going to be, I'm going to braise the kale and the collards, and you can look up braising greens for a recipe. And then I'll have those set aside, and I'm going to make a galette with, it's just a free-form pastry. I have a savory pastry in the freezer left over from something else, and I thought, well, I'll just roll that out, and then you put a little feta in there and some egg, and you have a really nice dinner. The chard is so lovely, so I will take the stems off and save them and dice them, and I'll saute those with an onion, and then just quick saute the leaves so they're very tender. I don't want to overcook those. Kohlrabi, golly, these are one of my most favorite vegetables. And Ken and I just finished off last week's. I peeled them and julienne them and turned them into the salad I showed you last week. I think I'm going to do the same thing because it's so refreshing. What else have we got? Lovely greens here. You could either braise these if your palate is a little tender to bitter flavors, but I like to wash it, wrap it in a tea towel, and just do a coarse chop, toss it in a vinaigrette, and put poached or fried eggs on top of it. That's one of our favorite breakfasts. And look at the treasure that showed up in the box this week. French breakfast radishes. They're lovely. And the tops are stellar as well. So you kind of got two for the price of one vegetable here. I'm going to take the tops off right about there, toss them in here, and wash them together because they are compatible in terms of flavor. And then save a little of the green on the end so you can grab it and you can eat them. And a traditional way would be a really good piece of French bread with some butter on it and a little salt served with the radishes. Try it for a little cultural fun. We've got carrots that are lovely. I'm not sure I have plans for them this week. I do try to keep some carrots already diced or julienned in my refrigerator for cooking during the week. So I don't, if I'm in a hurry, I can just make sure something goes in. That's how a pot of soup happened this week on the fly. If you've got things staged in the fridge, then making things like that becomes a much easier task. And look at, we've got turnips, and these are beautiful. Look at those. Look at the color on that. Turnips are full of fiber and vitamin C. I think it's curious that Mother Nature provides so many things that are going to help our immune system as we go into the winter. So don't pass up. If you're not used to the flavor of a turnip, which has a little more bite, not a lot, but a little, mix it with the potatoes and make a mash, and that's a good way to integrate that flavor into your family's sense of flavors and things that they get used to. Or there's a soup recipe that we'll have posted, and in that case you can use your leeks and your potatoes and your turnips and even some greens if you want to. It's a really, really hearty soup. And if you want to add even more nutrition, you can add some brewer's yeast to it. So check out that recipe. One of the tricks I've learned with leeks, so that I don't lose them in the back of the fridge, sometimes I will just, if I know it's going to be a busy week and I know I'm going to need them, but I don't know what yet, I've already taught you how to clean them, cut them longitudinally, and fillet them open and get the dirt out. This portion and above is for stock making, so make sure it's washed, and then you just wrap that in a towel and have it ready for stock making. This all can be sauteed, so you essentially end up with half moons. And if you have all of that pre-sauteed in your refrigerator, then you're well on your way to supper. Some lovely onions. They don't have to be used right away. Just don't stick them in your fridge. And make sure there's some place where they can continue to cure. And then we've got radicchio. Look at that baby. This gorgeous guy. I made a mistake a couple weeks ago in thinking that they were tender and needed to be used right away. I've since learned that they are another one of Mother Nature's keeper vegetables. So they are a little more robust. Some of the endive I got 2 weeks ago, I just checked, and it's still in really good shape. So we're going to play with that. I'm going to grill that one this week, though. I'm playing with an idea. There's two ideas I have. I don't think we're going to fire up our pizza oven this week, but next time we do, I'm going to save some of this and try this recipe. Now, I haven't done it yet, but here's what I'm thinking. It's European style pizza, so they cook very quickly. But if it was sprinkled with a little bit of Gruyere and caramelized onions, cook 3/4 of the way, and then take some of the radicchio, chiffonade it quite finely, and rub it with some salt and pepper and olive oil so it's ready to go right on the pizza. Bring that pizza out, almost cooked. Sprinkle the radicchio over it, stick it in for another minute so you get some of that little char, pull it out and drizzle it with truffle oil. I'm thinking that would be pretty darn good. So that's one possibility. The other thing I'm thinking I might do this week is to marinate it for, probably overnight. That's my style. So I'm going to take some olive oil and some balsamic, I'll use white balsamic vinegar I think for this, and salt and pepper, and just quarter that, lay it open wedges and drizzle it over there. Just let it marinate in that, and then later on I'm going to saute it just with some olive oil and see if I don't like that flavor profile. I'll let you know when it's done, but that's one of my ideas for the week on this. What else have we got? We've got a mini Hubbard hiding here, and again, this can keep for a long time. Just make sure there's no damage to the flesh and it's got a good stem on it. So Ken can show you the other ones curing on our windowsill in the dining room over here. That sugar pumpkin, the one that looks like an orange pumpkin, is what we're going to use today to make enchiladas. And I'll show you how to cut that apart and roast it in cubes. And I'm choosing that one because it's had the most time to transpire, the most amount of moisture out of it, so it'll roast the best. Last but not least, David has harvested the sugar pie pumpkins, and you can tell that they are the sweet pumpkins by this webbing, this particular variety. This is one of our favorites for making pumpkin pie. This fellow is destined to our Thanksgiving dinner table. That'll give him plenty of time to cure. And I will probably roast the pumpkin flesh the week before Thanksgiving, and that way it's all ready to go to make pies later on in the week. So we will see you in the kitchen and get to work. We're 45 minutes into kitchen time with the vegetables, and I have the 2 bunches of greens have been washed and chiffonade, and you can see there's an onion underneath there that's already cooked for about 15 minutes. And in my braising fashion, I like to just leave that on top for about 5 or 10 minutes, and then I'll start to turn it together. That will allow me to have this cooled before I make the galette in a couple days. So that's the that's the kale and the collards. Our breakfast radishes are all ready to go. I'm just going to put a cover on them so they're cold and crisp in the morning. And then I like you to see that you don't necessarily have to use everything every week. So we had these gorgeous beets about 2 weeks ago, and I just stashed them in my vegetable drawer in a bag with a few slits in it so it could breathe. And then I'm going to roast these so we get to show off some of the wonderful stripes that come with that particular variety. A couple of carrots, and then here are our Brussels sprouts. And see, I like to flip them over so that flat edge gets the caramelization. And yes, vegetables take some time to prepare, and sometimes our economy doesn't allow for lots of time. But I think if we share the chores together and just dedicate 2 or 3 hours a week to getting things cooked and ready, then meals will happen a lot faster when you're really pushed for time. And that's always been my strategy. You may come up with better strategies, and we'd love to know about them. What else have we got going here? We're going to teach you how to make enchiladas. This is a tomatillo sauce I got out of the freezer last night, and I want you to see, it'll separate. It's got a lot of pectin in it. And so right before I pour that over the enchiladas, I'll run it through the blender. These are a couple of 4 cubes of my frozen roasted peppers from the summer. They haven't quite defrosted yet. And then also the peppers from last week. I'll pull the char off of them and dice those up in there as well. And then that'll go in our enchiladas with goat cheese and roasted pumpkin. And then the next thing I want to show you is how to take apart this pumpkin, this sweet winter squash, so that it can be roasted in cubes and go in your enchiladas. This bundle here includes all the greens that we were talking about, and those will go in a plastic bag, and then I can just grab them in the morning for our breakfast salad or evening dinner. Do a coarse chop, and then you can throw possibly some roasted beets on them, maybe some pickled beets, golly, anything you'd like, your favorite dressing. Nuts are a nice thing to add to fall salads, as well as sliced apples. So if you have a few apples left from the farm's last week offering, then you can do that as well. So we'll get to the pumpkin here in a few minutes. Took me about 1 hour and 45 minutes to get here. If turnips are new to your family, I would suggest dicing them up and steaming them with potatoes. This just has 3 tablespoons of butter in it. That's it. Turnips have a little more water in them, so you can get away with not using milk or anything else like that. But it's a nice way to soften the flavor of turnips and start introducing that flavor to your kid's palate. The chard's all ready to go. Like I showed you earlier, I like to keep the stems separate so that I can do a quick saute with an onion, throw the stems in, colors nutrition, and then quickly saute those without overcooking them. So I will wrap them up in a couple layers of cotton fabric and then in a plastic bag, and they'll be ready sometime during the week. I roasted the vegetables, so 2 of the carrots, the Brussels sprouts, and then this looks kind of like salami, but it's not. Those are actually beets, those wonderful ones that are striped white and red. And then I splashed everything with a little bit of Maldon salt. It's kind of a flake salt. It's a nice crystal. And a good ample dose of, I think of it as white balsamic vinegar. They call it golden, but it's sweet, so it sort of sets off against the roasted flavor. Here are the braised greens that are ready to go in the galette. I'll make later on, probably in 3 or 4 days, and just tuck that in a pastry free form with some feta cheese and eggs. And the salad I made last week. Let me just comment. You might notice that sometimes things look similar. You don't have to reinvent the wheel every week. You can change up the flavor palette. So you've got crunchy, you've got some prepared greens ready to go, you've got some that are washed but not cooked because you don't want to overcook those. You have a mash of multiple vegetables, so there's a bump in nutrition and flavor, and it's already done. All you have to do is heat it up in the oven. I like my roasted vegetables room temperature, so if you're going to eat these in a couple days, I just cover them with some parchment paper, tuck it in the fridge, and then pull it out a couple hours before you want to eat. Our next step is going to be to dissect the pumpkin, so we'll get on with that in just a minute. Okay, so this pumpkin we've had in our care since the very first week of October, so it's had time to cure. That's how I knock the top off. And then you want to get a purchase and then cut down. Now, if you're afraid of knives and you haven't quite gained your confidence with them, the other thing that you can do is put this in a clean plastic bag, a heavy one, drop it on some concrete, and it'll split open, and then the tension's off of it, and it's easy to cut. Now this is cured well, and there you go. Now Mimi loves to get in here and salvage the pumpkin seeds and roast them, and you can look up a recipe for that. It smells really good. I like to use grapefruit spoon for lots of things in the kitchen. You've seen me use it to scoop the center out of large zucchini. Well, squash is squash. This is how I clean it out. I already have the oven preheated to about 425. I'll turn it down to 400 once I get going, once I put it in. But I'm going to cube this. So it does take a little more effort on the front end, but that way you get that nice caramelized piece of squash, those little squares to tuck inside the enchiladas. So I'll get this cleaned up and then I will start cutting it apart. I'll show you how to do that. I cut a half in half, so I got a quarter, and then I put the quarter in strips because I find it easier to peel this way. So if you can cut down in a way, you're a lot safer. Get a purchase on it and just do this. The best thing is a vegetable peeler, but my vegetable peeler is not near sharp enough. So you can see a little bit of green under the skin. Not much though. Sometimes that's just the nature of the squash. It's because when it opened, it smelled just completely sugared up and good. So you want a cube about this size. It's going to shrink like so. So can you see the size we're going after? We'll toss them a little oil and then we'll roast them in an oven at about 425. So we'll get that all done, toss it in a bowl, and then put it in the oven. It should take about 20 minutes or so. It depends on your oven. I'm going to start it at, I heated the oven to 450, but I am going to just cook it at 425. Check it to make sure I'm not getting too much caramelization too quickly. Maybe turn it down to 400 for another 10 minutes. So we'll go from there. So this is 3/4 of that sweet pumpkin that we got in early October. And I just put some grapeseed oil down. That can handle the higher temperatures a little better. So we'll smear it around. And then this is plenty for the enchiladas. These will shrink down a bit. And I'll just roast the rest of it. So I'll just lay that on there like that and pop it in the oven. It is at 450 and I'm going to turn it to 425. So it's casserole making time, enchiladas, and this is a fun thing to do with a bunch of family members. If this oil is not hot enough, try that again, let it heat up. I like to cook my tortillas a little bit in oil. I find that they hold together better. For years I did an old trick of just putting them in some boiling water, but I found that they kept falling apart, and I like them better with just a little bit of fry on them, just enough to soften them and make them malleable. And then you can set up an assembly line. So it's a messy job, but the fun thing about casseroles, always, enchiladas included, is you get the mess done and then you're finished. All you have to do is heat up dinner. Another trick I've learned over the years is if you will assemble your enchiladas, I just put a little sauce on the base, whether it's red or tomatillo, and then tuck those enchiladas in nice and tight. And don't pour the rest of the sauce on it until you're ready to put it in the oven. And that way you get that nice crunchy top. Now, if you're not into goat cheese, we always had cheddar and Monterey Jack and pepper jack hanging around the house, and that goes just as well. You could tuck some meat into it, but this one is going to showcase our winter squash. So this was the roasted squash. It's cool now. And we will put a little bit in each one. And I'll show you what it looks like when it's all rolled up. So in my proverbial fashion, I have probably overstuffed this, but we'll give it a try. There we go. And we'll just tuck it in like so. And we'll just keep repeating that process. So you could have someone in charge of the roasted peppers, or someone in charge of squash, somebody in charge of whatever cheese you choose to put in it. Notice I didn't put any sauce in the middle. I leave that on the outside, and I think you get a better product. It took Ken and I 10 minutes to get this assembled, and I'm just scraping off whatever leftovers are here. I'm going to whirl a little bit of the Montrachet into the tomatillo sauce so it looks a little creamier, and we're going to just tuck this right in the oven in the next few minutes. Mimi and I wish you a wonderful, wonderful season through the holidays and into spring, and then look forward to lots of hugs next June when we regather in the barn. I'm staying optimistic. I hope that you will revisit the website and realize that a lot of those recipes are really templates, and you can substitute items for winter vegetables if you really get jammed up. My email's on our website, so I'd be happy to have conversation with you if you've got any questions. Let kindness and mercy be the flags that you fly from your heart this season. We love you guys a lot. See you soon. Bye.